Hi, everybody. Today I'm going to talk about why central bank digital currencies are a really terrible thing. We should not want it. It is not about innovation. I'm going to cover all this. This is, I think, one of the most important topics right now. Central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, are being pushed by governments as this innovation, but in reality, it's more of slavery or really, really intense government oppression. Okay, let's go ahead and hop on in. I first write this up in my newsletter, The Held Report. Subscription link is on the screen or in the description. And if you want to read it first, read it there. So I co-wrote a paper with Natalie Smolinski on CBDCs. You can read the full, the link is below for the full write-up that we did. It's 47 pages, which is quite a bit longer than this video and the newsletter. But her and I wrote this up with the Bitcoin Policy Institute, a political action committee. So they're going to take this and show it to different folks in Washington and different regulators. Okay, cool. So what are central bank digital currencies? Well, it's a digital currency controlled and run by a central bank. It's a direct liability of the central bank, which means it's correspondent to the M0 money supply. Basically, it's digital representations of fiat currency. It's not just digital representations of fiat currency. It's money issued directly by the central bank. So like you would literally have a bank account at the Federal Reserve. This is very, very different than the commercial banking infrastructure that we currently have. Now, proponents of CBDCs emphasize their benefits. Now, transactions can occur instantly, digitally, and at very low cost. Intermediaries, who are today's steward of cash, are removed, basically lowering friction and cost for consumers. But at the same time, they're with the same benefits available with cryptocurrency, supposedly by a government. So what are the features of a CBDC? It's programmable cash. So it's cash that, cash is traditionally like anonymous, but with this, it would be on a ledger. It enables central banks to have direct insight into identities of transacting parties, and they can block, confiscate, or censor any transaction. They really, really do want this sort of visibility, so they're able to control it. And then at the same time, what they would do is they would eliminate physical cash. So with physical cash, they would eliminate that. So the only way to transact would be in the central bank digital currency. They could also do things like having like a negative interest rate, which would punish balances over time. And this would be the kind of the key component of, if you're to do a CBDC, a central bank digital currency, you have to basically end your existing cash system. So what are the problems with CBDCs? Well, they have a couple different problems. The first one is scope creep. So what that means in tech is that the scope of the work that you're doing is getting larger and larger, and it's not really tied to the core mission. So CBDCs would inherently cannibalize the existing commercial financial system. If consumers placed all their funds in an account with the central bank, that would hurt the commercial bank's ability to attract depositors and perform the natural function of offering loans and mortgages, et cetera, and other banking activities. JP Morgan strategist Josh Younger estimates that 30% of commercial banks' funding base could leave checking accounts to CBDC accounts. He recommends keeping a low cap on CBDC accounts, approximately like $2,500, which would minimize the impact of this transition. The Bahamas has tried this, by the way, already. Most households have less than $1,000 in their checking accounts, so that would meet the needs of most lower income households. Supporters of CBDCs will argue that the CBDC would allow the government to reduce fraud and have greater flexibility in monetary policy. But make no mistake, our government would nationalize the banking industry with the creation of a CBDC, and any of these caps that are placed on total limit of CBDC value, they could always be raised or eliminated by a future Congress. Second reason why this is a bad idea, governments are very poor at execution. Whether it be social welfare programs, military conflicts, or regulations, governments have time and time again proven to be very poor allocators of capital, and they have no incentive to do it efficiently. A CBDC would be no different. There's a really cool thread posted by this Twitter account. I've actually met this guy in person. Really, really sharp dude. Definitely recommend you follow him. Arbido. And he wrote about the USPS's, so the U.S. Postal Service journey of e-com, electronic computer original mail, which is a pretty funny, absurd story on how the USPS tried to create email. So they wanted to expand the scope of physical postal service to the digital world, and so between 1969 and 1971, 21 studies were produced exploring various ways to enable the post office to handle mail. The Postmaster General described the adoption of electronic digital transmission of mail as the next obvious step for the Postal Service. And so basically, the post office wanted to look innovative, wanted to be cool, and they wanted to completely own the idea of email, like their own centralized, completely controlled version. Well, it sounds a little bit like CBDCs, huh? And despite the understanding that email represented a threat to USPS, and even though they had all the resources and everyone was on board, all the stakeholders were aligned, they fundamentally misunderstood their customer. No one wanted to use the product. Who would want to send emails to the post office just to have them print the emails out and send them via regular physical mail? I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous. E-com was actually the second try at mail sent electronically. Over a decade earlier, the USPS had actually partnered with Western Union called Mailgram, a service that would enable users to send messages via telex to be printed and sent via physical mail. I mean, it's just such a crazy idea that you'd send it electronically and then it'd be printed again. So governments are typically very bad at implementing something like this. This would be no different. Privacy is a huge one. In a recent CBDC hearing, Republican Tom Emmer, a member of Congress, highlighted the huge privacy issues with the CBDC. Any attempt to craft a central bank digital currency that enables the Fed to provide retail bank accounts and mobilizes the CBDC rails into a surveillance tool, able to collect all sorts of information on Americans, and would do nothing but put the United States on par with China's digital authoritarianism. The last two things here that are issues with CBDCs: centralized risk. The U.S. government is being hacked of this moment multiple times. There have been egregious breaches of sensitive information held by governments, including spy secrets exploits, in which the government allowed business and citizens to open to exploit by them and other governments, military secrets, and financial infrastructure. Can we trust the Fed to perfectly protect our most sensitive information, that there will never be a breach? Because if there was, we're talking about every single transaction of yours permanently displayed for the world to see. And based on a survey done by the Club for Growth, just 15% of voters support the Fed issuing a digital currency. Authoritarian control is the final issue here. When certain politicians complain that we're behind China in implementing a CBDC, that's quite a weird statement, because it's akin to saying we're behind China on building like concentration camps or authoritarian crackdown. CBDCs are inherently authoritarian, which is probably why China is pursuing them. Thus, a strong argument can be made that a CBDC will actually slow down China's desire to be a global reserve currency. What country would want to use that when it instead could hold dollars that aren't spying on them? Finally, here's some things that a CBDC could do. It could tax individuals based on income, race, or religion, force citizens to spend money on specific items created by, created by a particular ethnicity or under a certain duration, or censor transactions based on something you said on Twitter. So what are our alternatives to CBDCs? Well, fiat currency is already highly digital. Digital dollars and other fiat currencies are created and used today through the commercial banking system in an entirely digital way. People deposit their fiat-denominated holdings at a commercial bank like Bank of America and then transact electronically using a variety of digital payment rails like ACH, FedWire, and SWIFT. Commercial banks, in turn, use digital record keeping and track their balances with the central banks. Another alternative is stablecoins. People worry about how stablecoins might threaten the US dollar or compete with the CBDC, but historically the Fed has supported innovation in the private sector, and stablecoins could extend the use of the dollar by making it cheaper between businesses and across borders. Worries around stablecoins destabilizing the U.S. economy are misplaced. As Quarles from the Fed said eloquently, the concern that stablecoins represent the unprecedented creation of private money and thus challenge our monetary sovereignty is puzzling, given that our existing system involves and indeed depends on private firms creating money every day, aka commercial banks. There are certainly risks to stablecoins being partially backed or unstructurally sound, but there are various ways that can be remedied through audits or other transparency measures. Finally, Bitcoin, I think, is the best alternative to CBDCs. The highly surveilled and controlled world of digital money suggests that a meaningful alternative must be private, uncensorable, and free. These are the exact characteristics of Bitcoin, a global cryptocurrency issued by a protocol rather than a bank. Bitcoin was launched to preserve a space for individual economic freedom in a world where economic life increasingly takes place on the World Wide Web and where surveillance and censorship are easy to implement. Bitcoin provides all of the purported benefits of CBDCs for end users: instant, low-cost, or even free transactions domestically and across borders, final settlement, etc., but without built-in surveillance and transactional without transaction control, and without the ability for Bitcoin for anyone to control Bitcoin's monetary policy. For those reasons, it presents an important alternative to both CBDCs and digital dollars. In conclusion, as Quarles from the Fed eloquently stated, utility in the dollar doesn't come from technology. It comes from the trustworthiness of our government, economy, and monetary policy. Stablecoins are an extension of that trust, utilizing a new innovation, a blockchain. And stablecoins hold great promise to further the demand for U.S. dollars, promoting innovation at the corporate and individual level, and allowing the free market to work as intended. As U.S. citizens, what do we want? Do we want to be like China and allow our government to have complete control over every action, over every payment, over every aspect of our lives, all for the dubious claim of innovation or efficiency? Or do we want to embrace the core cultural values of America, freedom, risk-taking, property rights, and equality? To CBDC or not to be CBDC, that is the question. And to me, it's no doubt that we should not. I think the ultimate free money is Bitcoin. But if the U.S. government's going to pursue new types of stablecoin or new types of digital dollar function, it should be with stablecoins. Hope you enjoyed. If you like this, throw me a like, give me a subscribe. It helps with the algorithm. And I'll see you all next week. Cheers. Bye.